CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. So, dude, Bryan Bieschke, how you doing, man?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I wanted to catch up with you really quick. I don't know. We are heading to Reliable Plant for 2025 in about a week, a little bit less than, and we're going to be on this awesome panel. I want to first thank you for being on the panel with me again.
Of course.
Very helpful. And the concept behind this panel that we're going to do is beyond the buzzwords, and it's basically practical ways to leverage CMMS. Kind of a common theme. We talk about it all the time for a couple of years now. I just want to put to you, when it comes to buzzwords, which buzzwords would you want to get beyond or go deeper on? And second thing, what would you like most for somebody to take away from this panel discussion that we're going to do?
I'll start with the latter first, which is, I think what should be considered, right, to a takeaway. I can't force you to do anything, but consider this. There are things that have, in maintenance and reliability and plant manufacturing, everything, there are things that have stood the test of time and scale that we are still doing, that still provide immense value and return. And those are the things that you should prioritize. And if technology or buzzy, new, shiny things help enable those things, then we can talk about those things and move forward with those things. But if the new shiny things talk about replacing those fundamentals, those things that have stood the test of time, and have made these great businesses and companies who they are from a maintenance and operations perspective and a capacity perspective, probably should ignore those things. I know you and I were just talking, Greg. I just spoke at another virtual summit, and the summit was supposed to be about all this technology stuff, but the 90% of the conversation came down to relationships and the fundamentals of planning and scheduling and doing the right work at the right time. And, all these simple things that we don't like to talk about a lot, Yeah. And at the end of that summit, the host was like, you know what, guys, I'm kind of blown away by this. I was expecting to talk about technology and nuts and bolts and all these things. And we didn't, because the reality is the value is in all these other very simple things. I don't want to say exact buzzwords because there's just a billion of them. But there's just so much noise and things that are, in my opinion, are distracting good maintenance professionals and teams from the things that are really going to drive value for them, because they're pressured maybe externally or internally at the business to adopt technology or to maximize, lean out, whatever you want to call it. And it takes away from the things that are really going to provide value for them.
That's, when it comes to these buzzwords, I think we like to bat them around a little bit, make fun of them. And the pace at which technology moves, that's lightning fast. Yeah. And for lack of a better, more accurate description. And there was a time, especially for me, where buzzwords, new things that were like clever and impactful, actually were clever and impactful and meaningful. And as the noise and the echo chambers grew, like everything's internet, everybody's got a phone, blah, 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 blah. There's all this saturation. It kind of strips out the power and the impact of those buzzwords, and they do become noise. They become less valuable. It's kind of like everybody's a consultant, which means there are no more consultants. It's really hard to find the good ones. And this thing about CMMS, you're talking about the discussion that you just gave, the presentation panel, if you will, where they thought it was going to be about technology and it wasn't. And that's typically what it is. The technology itself, I think you and I strongly agree. We're very well aligned on this, that the things that you do, those should not change, of course, provided those are, number one, effective. Then you want to make that efficient. And the technology, like a CMMS, is to document and augment. So how can a CMMS, from a practical perspective, help you with those basics? Is by tracking it, giving you visibility to it. And those are also basic things. But here's a different twist on what I was asking originally. So when we're on the panel, if you could prime somebody to ask you one question, like from the crowd, or maybe it'll be me, who knows, what should people coming to our panel discussion at Reliable Plant, and that's going to be on June 4th at 2 p.m., what should they have in mind as the question that is going to be answered, in your view?
I will say the question should be, well, if buzzwords are just noise, what should we be paying attention to? What should be top of mind? Because that gives us an opportunity to not just say that a lot of buzzwords are BS, but it gives us the opportunity to say, hey, here's an alternative, right? So if you know me, I want to be able to give some sort of actionable insight, something that someone can take and run home with it, right? So that's what I would say. Just ask us straight up. Buzzwords are most of them are noisy. A lot of them are great, right? But a lot of them are noisy. What should I do? What should I be focusing on? And I could read you a book because there's so many things that we can do as practitioners that are very valuable. Are they going to be hard? Yes. Are they going to take out some skill and some communication and relationships? Yes. But they're going to be meaningful and impactful for you generally right out of the gate if you're doing those things effectively, right?
Yep.
And then we work on optimizing them. But there's a lot of big talk about like the technology and like all these things, and the conversation always gets back to, from a CMMS standpoint, it's like, well, all the knowledge is leaving. All my smart guys are retiring. So we got to put sensors there instead, or I got to do this, or I got to do that. It's like, well, a CMMS is inherently a historian. It's not just asset historian. It's knowledge historian. If you're leveraging your team and going to the old heads and the dudes and gals who have been doing the work, who know what they're doing, they're very low variability, high first time fix rate, have them tell you all those things, create those tasks, those preventive maintenance measures, those corrective work instructions with the special tools. Maybe Johnny's done this 1 billion times and no one knows that you should probably bring a set of 90-degree snap ring pliers for this one really pain in the butt snap ring. But no one knows that except for Billy, right? So when someone shows up to do that job, they're going back to the tool crib or they're trying to pull it out with pliers and you know what I mean? So like, use your CMMS as a historian for the reality of what's actually happening in your plant, not AI, this tech, blah, 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 blah. Remember this, Greg? Remember for like 10 years, it was IoT the sensor things are going to replace everything. It's going to be the next, there's not going to be any more technicians looking at machines. We haven't even mastered that.
Yeah.
That has not been mastered. Now, there are a lot of good companies and people who are mastering it, but from a general understanding, it's not mastered. There's still companies that are selling you sensors without any commissioning, without any insight, without anything. Okay? There's a lot of people who are relying on them to do what they say they're going to do with no expertise or internal knowledge, and it's still having downtime. You're still having low availability. You're not getting anything. So I just say, just keep that in mind, how IoT, the sensor stuff was supposed to be this big, massive thing that was supposed to change everything. And it has, but we still really, as collectively as an industry, have not mastered it. And I think the same thing is going to happen for all the other buzzwords like predictive and AI and machine learning, which is the same thing you asked my man Howard, he'll tell you, all that stuff. It's going to be great and it's going to have its place, but you got to have the industry as a whole be able to master and understand these things incrementally, or, if we take massive leaps, that's great too.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, what we're really saying when we do these panels, when you and I have discussions here, when we talk to Howard Penrose or George Williams or all of our real deal. And when we say real deal practitioners, it's people that have been in the trenches, they've done the work, they stay plugged in, they are about delivering the outcomes. They're not about making the sale. It's not that they don't have to, but that's just part of it. They're focused on those delivery outcomes. And I'm pretty righteous about it. I'm wide open about that at this point after 3.5 years of doing this stuff, because I'd rather that so that people know. And we understand this for anyone. You have all this noise. You got to get through it. You got to figure out who you should really be working with. And that comes from education, really. You have to educate yourself as the potential user of technologies, changing the way your culture is, changing the way you're running maintenance, how you're bringing in reliability, whatever it might be. You have to educate yourself, and those potential vendors, consultants, people that are going to actually help you, ask them really hard questions. What I mean by that is don't jam them up. Ask them what you really need to know. If you're lost, tell them. You will get a sense very quickly, I think, if they know you, if they understand you. If they're telling, that's different than if they're understanding and then guiding, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just said it on the summit. I was just on a panel with just an hour ago, and I said, there's an argument to be made that the supplier or manufacturer or consultation or whatever that you choose is arguably more important than the technology that you choose.
Yeah.
Now, and I said, I fully understand there are some very nuanced, very technologies that need to be done for certain things. Like, I totally get that. But I'm saying, like, the partner that you choose to be educated by and to leverage their technology is more important than the technology itself. As you know, we know a lot of professionals in the space. I'll just use vibration as an example because it's so big, right? There's a lot of professionals that even if their product wasn't the best product, I would probably still choose who they are and the business that they represent, because I know I'm going to get it straight. I know I'm going to get real boots on the ground, insights and education and all those things. More important to me than, wow, this is the coolest vibration sensor technology there is. And meanwhile, they send it to you in a box and you set it up, right? It's
Where
like,
do I put it? Ugh.
Yeah, like, I know enough to be dangerous, right? But there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of things that someone who's not educated or understand, they might not know, right?
Yeah, and you got to be careful out there of the yes men and the yes women that can't really kind of back that up. And I'm not necessarily calling anybody out. I'm saying that this is what customers deal with. So when we do this panel next week, I think, for anybody that's in attendance, we want, once we get to questions at the end, we want people to ask anything they want to and expect us to either answer it very directly or like immediately say, hey, I don't know about that. What about this panelist? Do you know anything about that? Because that's really powerful for people as well when you don't know. It's not always about getting the answers. It's always coming back to that education. We're on a journey. We're here to make a difference. So, Bryan Bieschke.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being with me for this brief episode of CMMS Radio.
You're very welcome, Greg. Thank you, man. I'll see you Monday.
Yes, sir. Hey there, Trent McJunkin, man. Thanks for jumping on quick on CMMS Radio. How you doing, brother?
Doing great, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, always, man. You got a forum here anytime you want, and I really want to just catch a few minutes as you, myself, Bryan Bieschke, Andy Gager, and Alex Bolan are all heading out to the Reliable Plant Conference in Schaumburg. Call it Chicago. It's right there. And we're going to jump on and do a panel discussion. And I thought, well, for this one, ahead of time, I want to ask Trent very specifically what you think people should expect when we come to this panel and we start chopping it up about getting beyond the buzzwords and talking about practical outcomes when it comes to leveraging CMMS technology, which for anyone who doesn't know is computerized maintenance management software. I want to know what you want people to take away from this thing, Trent, and what you'd love to talk about when we're on this panel, what kind of stuff you want to get into.
Man, I cannot get to Chicago fast enough because this is going to be a really great one. But what I think people really should take away from this is practical application for you, for your facility. What can you take away and implement the following Monday? What are your pain points?
What do you think are some of the common ones?
I think some of those are just not knowing how work should happen in your facility and not being able to put that on a whiteboard and voice that. I think people get so caught up in all the features and all the things and all the possibilities, and they quickly leave what the current state is, understanding here's how we do business today, here's what it should be, and here's how we're going to get there. Putting all that into actionable steps.
So this idea, the way we're running this thing, getting beyond the buzzwords, because, I like to make fun of the buzzwords, but I also think there's good stuff in there. It's just a little bit overblown and too noisy. It doesn't really come down to the technology. We'll probably talk about that a little bit, but this sounds like I'm always saying, like people and process first. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to think about what makes the tech most effective. The person out there doing the work, how do you get all that information that they see firsthand and capture it so you can trend it over time? Don't get too caught up with all the fancy software things and all the cool technology. Go back to the basics.
Yeah, it's amazing how that's always what it comes down to. So I think one of the interesting things, you and I spent some time together earlier this year, and one of the interesting things I found is when it comes to running your team and how you put everybody together, simple things, basic things like starting with a stand up, starting with a meeting so that everybody knows what's on deck. That's got nothing to do with the software. But now when you're leveraging CMMS technology, you've got a resource essentially in the palm of your hand or at your computer where you can see, well, what's been going on over here, what's been going on over there, what's been failing. And I think one of the things that's often overlooked is what's working really, really well. Once you're leveraging the technology on top of that good, solid, basic principles, solid foundation of culture and workflows and all that, now you've got something that can tell you stories and give you an idea as to when you're doing well and when you're not. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. I think if you have struggles with a CMMS, as long as you have, one that's good for you, you have to marry that CMMS. It has to be core and fundamental to the way you're doing business. It has to be the gospel on whatever that equipment is. Everything has to go in it, and all our data-driven decisions come out of the CMMS. And if you're not utilizing it to that factor, you're really going to come up short.
Yeah, again, stuff we've talked about a lot, and I can't wait for us to do it again. I first want to thank you for, on very short notice, jumping in and doing this quick hit episode with me. And we don't want to give away the goods about the panel next week, but is there any one, maybe two, it's up to you, particular buzzword you'd like to showcase for people to either be careful or for people to start paying attention to?
I would say that there's one with two sides of the same coin. Be careful, but also pay attention to, and it's got to be AI. Everybody is saying AI this, AI that, and it's a tremendous tool. I have lately learned a lot about it, and I've also been using it in the wrong way, so I thought it was garbage for a while, up until recently. But now I'm starting to see, hey, this is really cool.
Now, I'm curious about that, so we'll get into that on the panel. because this is one of those areas that I want to explore as well. Not because it's such a hot thing, but regardless whether it's hot or common or hype, we want to get into how does it really matter? How does it make a difference? And we're going to get practical about that. So, man, Trent McJunkin, thank you for once again being on CMMS Radio. This time you're like a caller.
Thanks, Greg. Looking forward to seeing you in Chicago soon.
You got it, brother. Andy Gager, thanks for joining me again on CMMS Radio. I wanted to catch up with you very quickly before we head to the Reliable Plant Conference, which is happening next week out in Schaumburg. It's in the Chicago area. And we have got the CMMS Radio panel discussion all set. Thank you for being one of my panelists, by the way.
Oh, my pleasure.
We are going to go beyond the buzzwords and get to the practical ways you can use a CMMS. And I thought, as my preparation, I prefer low prep, no prep. Let's just show up and have a conversation. But when we're doing a panel, I want a little bit of a sense for you and your co-panelists, some of the stuff we're going to talk about. Now, so this is a two-part question. When it comes to getting beyond the buzzwords, are there some buzzwords that you would like to talk about when we're on that panel? Whether you want to make fun of them or you want to actually say, hey, this is a buzzy thing, but let's get beyond the buzz. Any of those that you would want in the mix?
Okay. I didn't study for this. So, it depends. It depends on the CMMS system you're going to use. So, for example, SAP. Is that a good word or a bad word, right? So there's all sorts of acronyms for SAP. Maximo, there's, different things we can do with Maximo, but every system, right? So whether you are trained properly on how to use the tool, there's all sorts of acronyms you can use for your system, right?
Right.
So are there buzzwords? Yeah. I mean, I won't tell you some of the acronyms for SAP, but, again, as you and I have talked about in the past, I say any CMMS system is a tool. It's not going to make you reliable. It's a tool that's going to help you become reliable. But, you can use any acronym you want, and it's going to describe pretty much every CMMS system you got.
Right. So, and some of the things I'm thinking kind of is one of the buzzwords of late is AI. We're going to beat up on that a little bit, but get to how it can be useful, how it can actually make an impact. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit about the digital transformation and some of that stuff. And we want to kind of get to the other side of that and talk about how CMMS can actually make an impact, how you can approach practical deployment and leveraging of such a system. So here's the second question. In your mind, forget about me. Just imagine there's a room of people that are coming to a panel discussion about getting beyond all the buzzwords and the hype and getting into the practical realities and how you can leverage a CMMS platform. What do you think they should have in their mind as a takeaway, or what would you want them to gain from anything you could tell them when it comes to how to leverage a CMMS in a practical way that makes an impact?
Oh, that's an incredibly loaded question.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and matter of fact, I just got done with this. Here's my recommendation. Your selection of it, and any CMMS system, by the way, I don't care what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that you have your number one, your processes developed, along with your RACI charts for those familiar with RACI, okay? Because you want this CMMS system to support your processes versus, you altering your processes to support the CMMS. Number one. Number two, you better have, when you're establishing or implementing your CMMS, I'm going to tell you an absolute must. You have to have a accurate asset registry, an asset hierarchy, and an equipment bill of materials, because everything in the maintenance world, everything feeds off of that. My maintenance planners, how do we repair the equipment? What materials do we need? What are all these things? How many of this and things like that? And then what are the lead times? And your CMMS system has to support all that. And then that segues into, these storerooms. What is the right things that we should have in our storeroom? And that's going to all be segued down into our equipment bill of materials. So do our current processes support the CMMS, or what should be, does the CMMS currently support our work management processes? And then from there, what's the asset registry, hierarchy, bill of materials?
Got it. So the reason I'm asking you this instead of just doing it in real time is it gives me some ideas about what I might have envisioned for questions. And it also gives me some ideas about how well we're aligned without saying, right? It gives me a picture, because you're going to be up there, and I really appreciate you being on the panel. You're going to be with Bryan Bieschke. You're going to be with
I
Trent.
Appreciate it. Believe me, yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And
looking
Bryan
forward to
it. Trent McJunkin, Alex Bolan. And, I'll be up there just having my normal fun and instigating, getting people talking. And we'll do some questions at the end of the panel from the crowd. And Andy Gager, I am looking forward to seeing you at Reliable Plant 2025 next week.
Next week. Looking forward to it, buddy.
Alex Bolan, welcome back to CMMS Radio, brother.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me back.
Oh, for sure, man. And the reason I wanted to chop it up real quick is next week we are going to be at Reliable Plant, the Reliable Plant Conference 2025. It's the 27th annual Reliable Plant Conference.
Dude, 27 years, really?
Yeah. They've been in that game for a while, and for me personally, it gets better every year that I go. I see
cool.
people I know, I meet new people, and once again this year we got a CMMS Radio panel discussion. This one is called Beyond the Buzzwords, and it's really about getting to practical strategies for CMMS success. And we can go in a lot of directions with that. And I know you've got your own presentation, and we're going to be doing some other cool stuff at conference. But as it relates to the panel, I want to ask you kind of two different questions. The first one is, when it comes to buzzwords, because we're going to get beyond the buzzwords, which means we first might want to pick on a few buzzwords or highlight a few buzzwords. Are there any buzzwords in particular that you are very interested in kind of getting beyond, where you would tell me what that buzzword is and why you want to get beyond that buzzword?
I hate to continually pick on the AI train. I really I need to own it is what I need to do. I need to stop creating these excuses for myself as to why I'm picking on AI. But again, we've talked about this before, and this has been talked about quite a bit, but I'm still not convinced that everybody is adopting AI in a way that's still going to be beneficial. Case in point, I saw a LinkedIn post today about a AI infused tool in a CMMS product, which I did think was pretty nifty, right? It was just all about prioritizing reporting, what work needs to be done first, how do we deliver it the right way. But I look at that and I'm like, that's not AI. Like, that's just an automation tool that honestly we've been doing for 10 years. So like when I see these kind of things come out and they're getting branded as AI, I'm just a little frustrated because I'm like, this isn't really AI. This is just like kind of adding additional logic to your platform to make it more functional. It's which I guess that is AI in a nutshell too. So,
Yeah.
I'm getting really tired of just, we're slapping the sticker of AI on everything right now. And that's not what it is. That's just not what it is. So that's, I'll get off that high horse. I'm sorry.
Well, and I think your intentions are good. You're saying that these functions and what it is doing is good. Whether or not it's AI, we understand it's a bit of a misnomer when it's actually a programmatic thing, machine learning that's designed to manage the data in useful, impactful ways. And I was thinking you could almost leave the AI completely out of it. And that's the kind of functionality we want in our various CMMS and, of course, EAM platforms to help us as users, as maintenance managers, even as technicians, as schedulers, to do some of the heavy lifting, but don't do so much of it that I don't actually know and understand what's going on. And we can kind of leave the AI out of it. So I think what we're probably saying is, yeah, cool, AI, that's what you're going to call it. And if it does real stuff and it makes a difference, we're cool with that. But let's take some of that shine off of it and kind of get beyond it. So question number 2 then would be, when we get beyond that buzzword or any other one that we're going to kind of showcase, talk about, and get beyond, when it comes to CMMS success, your maintenance management software, being successful with it, what then are the practical ways that you would hope people can take away from this panel discussion as it relates to their CMMS journey?
That's a great question, man. That's a really good one. First thing is, I would hope people can take away from our conversation that it is a journey, but it doesn't have to be a hard one. It can be, I'm not going to say easy, it can be simplified. It can be a lot more simple than it needs to be. And then, this has just been a common theme for me too, is that like getting back to the basics, I think is like a bumper sticker I almost need to make and start slapping on random places, because it's so powerful just remembering what the fundamentals are and how you get there. And I make this analogy when I go do my Army Reserve, my weekend warrior stuff, as I call it. We only go to the rifle range once a year. All right. Now, active duty folks, they go all the time. Right. Like they're shooting sometimes once a month, sometimes twice a month, but we only get to go shoot once a year. And I like to shoot for fun. So I do that regularly. So I'm behind a weapon more times than not, but everybody in my unit is not, they're not that. So we spend an insane amount of time going over the fundamentals of basic rifle marksmanship, which boils down to like, I'm making the analogy, right? But like, breathing, trigger pull, sight acquisition, right? Like those are just the core elements that you can't forget. And then where I see those getting lost is we have the qual table that we shoot on. It's changed recently, and so there's a lot of movements. There's a magazine change or multiple magazine changes involved in part of the qualification now. But what I see interesting, especially for these soldiers that aren't just used to shooting regularly, is when they get applied to the pressure moment, the basics go out the window. Like they just forget them completely. It's gone, and they're so consumed with the right now. What do I do right now? So then like a weapons jam happens and they just can't figure it out. And so as a long story of a long way to say that is very applicable to what we're doing in CMMS implementations or EAM implementations or the journey that goes with it, right? We started this path and we maybe or hopefully built ourselves a foundation of what's going on. But as we all know, things change. And, I love your reference all the time, Greg, of like, the parachute leader that comes in or somebody leaves. Something is going to inevitably change. And so we have to remember why we did this to begin with. What is the goal and the impact of the tool and the fundamentals behind we do it, and not get too terribly lost in the like whatever is stressing or concerning or not meeting the mark right now. Like, we do need to address those items. But again, it goes back to an old Army saying, military saying, smooth is fast, fast is smooth. And that is something that's another piece I hope people can take away from this conversation, is that be encouraged to go back to the fundamentals. Don't stress yourself too hard on trying to push the boundaries if you're not getting quite what you need out of it.
I like it. And we're going to leave the rest for actual real time on the panel, because that is one of those themes, if you will. I think it's foundational to any discussion about CMMS, whether you're an old pro, new to the game, trying to figure it out, struggling with your existing platform, possibly making a change to a different one. Those basic fundamentals, not only do they play, they have to stay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, brother. We'll see you in Chicago, man.
Dude,
Reliable
couple
Planet
days
coming up.
Yeah. Let's go.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, man.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.